I got divorced from my husband, and it's all because of my evil stepsister. She hooked my husband up with this girl, and it's disgusting because I know she looks so much better than me. Well, you guys be the judge of what I did to my stepsister. Let me know if I went too far. Experiences shape people's beliefs, so when I say marriage is not for me, just know that I'm coming from a place of experience. A bitter place of experience. I'm a real estate agent, and that's the only thing I can boast of in my life, which is true. I don't have a husband, and I don't think I have any family members who have my back. I started avoiding my family, my father, my stepmother, and my stepsister, Emily, after I had just finished college. My stepmom and stepsister were not yet in the picture. It was just me, my father, and my mom. We were very much okay until we lost my mom to cancer. It was difficult for my father and me, but my father moved on rather quickly. About 8 months after my mom had been buried, he announced to me that he was already engaged to be married, and I struggled with the thought for a while. I felt that if he truly loved my late mother, he should have not moved on so quickly. It just took me a while after I had listened to several opinions to let my father remarry. My mom was dead, so what was the point in trying to make him stop living too? He deserved to be happy, and this was something my mom would have wanted if she was alive. My father got married to my stepmom and her teenage daughter Emily, who was 14 years old at the time. I did my very best to accommodate both of them, but it's clear from the beginning that they were not willing to accept me. Emily was the one who repulsed me the most. To a certain degree, I understand my stepmom trying to be bossy and making sure things go the way she dictated in the house. I mean, she was the wife of my father, after all, and it was expected that she would be the one to take care of the home, while father provided for the bills. But my grievances were based on the fact that Emily was allowed to lazy about while they attempted to turn me to a slave. I'm not a lazy person. After my mom had died, my father wanted to hire house help, who would live with us or come some days of the week to do cleaning, laundry, but I refused. I took it upon myself to be doing these things to see, it was not a big deal. It was only a big deal because my stepsister Emily refused to lift a hand, not even as a minute, pin down anything, and just acted like it was all right. I had a serious issue with her one day. See, I was tidying up the dishes in the kitchen. Emily was drinking cereal, and when she was done, she just walked in disrespectfully, dumped the plate in the sink, and turned around to leave. I'd been nursing and enduring her lousiness for far too long, so I just let it out a bit. I told her that she could start doing some chores around the house and not expect me to do everything every time. Emily, who was already facing me, just turned around and with a tone of sarcasm, repeated the exact words which I said. I found myself immediately beating her while she screamed her mother's name at the top of her lungs. Emily's mom and my father rushed to the kitchen where they immediately delivered her out of my grip. She was already weeping profusely at the time. My father was shocked while my stepmom was already screaming and demanding my head. My father asked what happened, and Emily, amidst her tears, immediately answered, saying I pounced on her because she was hungry and had eaten. I calmly told my father what happened and even noted that Emily was supposed to be doing some chores around the house just like I did. So, my stepmother jumped right in and asked how I expected Emily at her age to be doing the chores in the house. She claimed Emily was too young and the plan was stupid. I expected my father to side with me, not for beating Emily, but for suggesting she needs to start throwing a helping hand around the house. Because even he could attest to the fact that I started doing dishes when I was barely 10 years of age, but my father did not. He simply said I was wrong to have lashed out at my sister, and asked that I give her time to adjust. I knew he was trying to be diplomatic since he did not want to offend his wife by telling her that Emily was wrong. My stepmother took Emily and I walked out of the place, and I could hear her tell my father that he was being too soft with me. So, I began to apply for a job in a different state because I needed to be far away from my family. I got an offer at a neighboring state within 2 weeks after I had begun sending out applications. The job did not pay much, but it meant that I would not be at home, and that was enough. I took the job and left the house without anybody asking where I was going. And even my father, whom I told the job to, was somewhat happy that I would not be around anymore, and that way, he would not have to deal with the tension which was his wife. Stepdaughter, and I had created some more tension in the house. I got to my job just to start fresh, and that's when I met the devil himself. Charles! It was not difficult for me to fall for Charles because I had nothing close to a family in the state where I worked and felt somewhat lonely. What began to date, and, well, I practically lived my life for him. We began to talk about making plans for it. Well, the plan that we made was about establishing a business where we would both be partners, and I contributed about 60% of the money that I earned every single month. Charles was the one in charge of overseeing the startup of the business, while I was doing my best to bring in money. He soon approached me later on and gave me excuses about why the business had failed. I'm talking about a business that had barely started, and I let the whole thing slide in the hopes that we were going to get married, but Charles came back a week later and said that he was breaking up with me. He said some other lady was pregnant for him and he wanted to marry her. I was broken. The pain that I felt was so much that I did not want to remain in the same state that Charles was. So I resigned from my job and I shamefully returned to my father's house less than a year after I left. I did not tell them what had transpired in my life, but my stepmother and stepsister concluded that I had failed where I was, and that was why I was back to the house. I observed that all the while I had been away, a maid was employed to do the things that I did while Emily was given liberty to do as she wanted. It was so much worse. Emily was left unchecked. It was so bad that she brought her friends to the house, and you could see that these friends did not have any bit of home training. They had a little sense of morality. Well, birds of the same feather flock together. These people would come to the house with Emily's cooperation and turn it upside down, and it would stay that way until the maids came to clean it up. I was glad when I got a job that took me out of the house every morning. This was how things went for about 4 years before I met the man I would go on to marry. I got engaged, and my fiancé went out to throw me an engagement party, which was supposed to be limiting to family members and a few friends of mine or my fiancé. But Emily turned the whole thing into her affair. The day came and my fiancé's family was present. He had equally invited some influential friends, and on such an occasion everybody dressed modestly. I was supposed to be the center of attention since it was my day, but Emily and her friends took that from me. Emily stormed into the party when it had gone halfway, and she had her entourage of semi-clad friends following her about. All eyes were immediately focused on them as people wondered who the indecent people were. It was very embarrassing, to say the least. No sooner had they arrived did they start displaying their madness. They got drunk within a matter of minutes, and one of Emily's friends by the name of Alexia began to twerk and do all manner of seductive dances while Emily and the rest just cheered on. The embarrassment was massive, and I could not stand there and do nothing, so I walked right to Emily and asked her to get herself and her friends out at the party. Emily asked why she should listen to me, and I told her I would personally drag them out of there, and it would not be funny. Everybody was already looking at Emily and me at this point, but I did not care. My stepmom came to find out what the ruckus was, and she frowned at the fact that I was kicking Emily and her friends out of the party. So, Emily's mom took her and her friends out, but I knew the matter was not over because she would raise the issue, and that was okay by me because I, need to have it addressed anyways. My father called me to his room the next morning to find out what happened at the party. I was about to explain to him when his wife said that there was no need to ask me because everyone at the party, including my father, could see that I had embarrassed her, her daughter, and her daughter's friends. My father knew the truth, but he did not want to say it. Emily and her immoral friends had attempted to destroy my party. He only said that I had overreacted, and that if I held any grievance against Emily and her friends, all I could have done was wait till the party was over. Well, before addressing it, rather than going ahead to create a scene right then and there. I knew it was a pointless fight trying to defend myself, so I simply told Pops
that I did not want either Emily or her friends at my wedding ceremony if it meant that they would show up looking immoral and equally display immoral behavior. My stepmom immediately rebuked me for saying Emily was immoral. She went further to say I had implied that she did not raise her daughter well, and she demanded that my father deals with me. Well, what could my father do to his daughter, who was all grown up and preparing for marriage? He certainly would not whip or ground me, and before my father would react to what was going on there, I told him that I had made up my mind. I did not want to see either Emily, her friends, or my stepmom at the wedding, and that was when my father went mad. He asked how he was supposed to show up at my wedding without his wife by his side. He noted that if I insisted that my stepmom and stepsister would not be in attendance of my wedding, then he would not be there either. And besides being absent, he would disown me and make it abundantly clear to everyone that he did not consent to my marriage to my fiancé. My father's threat to disown me shook me, but it did not make me cave into his terms, which included letting my stepmother and stepsister attend my wedding. I spoke with my fiancé about what happened between my family and me, and he was totally against me demanding my family members did not show up at the wedding. He asked that I put everything behind me and have my family members witness the best day of my life. He said that I would no longer need to face them after the day, and I would have done so without giving the public something to talk about. Okay guys, to cut the long story short, my stepmother and Emily attended my wedding, and Emily still showed up with the same set of people that she brought to my engagement party. There was no drama from them, though. Everything was cool. I went on my honeymoon, came back, and started life as a married woman. But that's when I would witness the greatest shock of my life. I never suspected that my husband would cheat on me, and worst of all, with somebody that I could not have seen coming. He did not give me any reason to think that he could tread that path. So, I went to work today, but I could not do much as I was feeling sick, so I obtained permission and went back home. The pain I felt in my back was so severe that I could not drive and my husband was not answering his phone. I had my colleague call his office, but we were told that he did not come in today. After we were unable to reach my husband, my colleague, well, he decided to call me a cab that would take me home. So I got home to see my husband's car parked in front of our house, and I wondered what he was still doing here at this time of day. I jumped out of the Uber, got to the house to the front door, and it was slightly ajar, and I could hear some people moaning from the living room. I didn't wait for my mind to start making assumptions. I just pushed the door to see what's going on, and to my surprise, my husband was making out with a lady on our couch. They were both distracted by my noise, and as they broke free from each other's clutch, I discovered that the girl looked oh so familiar. It looked, it took me a second. It was Alexia, the friend of Emily who was cheering at my engagement party for dancing so seductively. I stood there for a while without the faintest idea of what was going on. My husband bowed his head in shame while Alexia scurried around for her clothes. Alexia made her way to the door, but I was standing there and the back pain which I felt was suddenly gone as I pounced on her with rage. Alexia was lucky because my husband came to stop me from doing much harm to her, and I immediately channeled my anger to him. Alexia used the moment to escape. My husband did not put up any resistance as I slapped and pushed him for what he had done. He had just said that he was sorry and tried explaining that Emily was the one who had been distracting him for some time by telling him how her friend found him oh so attractive. My husband's excuse was so damn foolish. He cheated on me because he wanted to, not because my stepsister pushed her friend upon him. Emily only gave him the platform. I left the house and headed straight to my father's home, and I got to the house and my father, stepmother, and Emily were at the parlor. I wanted to attack that Emily, as I was ready to fight for my stepmother too, but my father intervened and did as the best he could to hold me back. I didn't wait for him to ask me what the issue was. I just started telling him while crying that Emily had ruined my marriage. So, I proceeded to tell my father how I caught Emily's friend sleeping with my husband, but My stepmother took in her usual manner and jumped right up just to make me look bad. She said that her daughter was not to blame if the man I married was a dog who cannot control himself. Emily supported her mother by telling my father he needs to have seen how many husbands was begging for her friend's attention ever since my engagement party. Emily, she didn't stop there. She went ahead to say that it took nothing for my man to fall like a pack of cards. My father did not shun my stepsister or her mother, but he did comfort me. He took me to my room and said that I could stay there for as long as I wanted. And my husband's been calling me ever since today, but I'm not taking his calls. Our marriage is over, and once I take the next couple of days to cry my eyes out, I would go to pick up my things and officially file for a divorce. As regards my stepsister Emily and I would enact my revenge the moment I get the slightest opportunity to do so. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Oh man, today's story is an insane stepsister drama. And if you think you've seen the craziest part, you should wait till update number 2. If you guys haven't had a chance to subscribe to the channel, just know I drop a video every single day on this channel and my other channels, which you can find down below. Check the pinned comment. Alright guys, go do all that, but let's go ahead and jump straight into the updates. Update number 1. My husband showed up at my father's house to beg me 2 days after I caught him cheating. My family except my father was around when he came, and Emily was busy making a joke out of the whole ordeal. And my husband pleaded and promised to be a better man, but his promises just fell on a deaf ear. I told him our marriage is over, and I would be officially filing a divorce. He pleaded some more, but I asked him to leave. I broke down in tears the moment he left, and you would only understand if you've ever been in love with somebody, but you just needed to let the person go. As I cried in my room, I could hear Emily and her mother loudly making jest at the whole situation. They claimed that the only reason I did not want to reconcile with my husband was because I had my eyes set on his wealth. These people just purposely wanted to make my life a living hell. I ignored their statement as I cried all the more. There were further attempts from my husband, which included having his parents call to plead on his behalf, but I made it crystal clear that though I loved their son, the trust which I had in him was no longer there, and there's nothing you can do about that. I was finally divorced from my husband a few weeks later, and I got 2 cars and the house that we lived in, and some money. You might say it's a good settlement, but I don't think it's worth the emotional trouble I went through. All the same, I've had enough to rebuild my life. I informed my father that I would finally be moving out of the house in a week, and that's because I'd given my husband a 5-day window to move out of the house. Otherwise, I would just destroy his things. The time came when I was supposed to move out. I went to greet my dad and say goodbye, and he did something that touched me. My father apologized for the way that he's behaved biasly towards me ever since his wife and her daughter came into his life. He said he was sometimes forced to turn a blind eye towards the maltreatment, which I suffered because he knew that I would someday have my own family, and he would be left with his wife, and if he had not pleased her enough, she could deprive him of his peace of mind. My father was still talking when my stepmom and Emily walked into the room. So, I quickly greeted him and made to leave, but the terrible jerks felt they needed to pick on me one last time before I left. Well, they did not say anything, but they had this facial expression on their face that showed their happiness at the fact that I was out of here. I immediately turned to my father and told him that these 2 ladies would kill him before his time if he did not cut them off. My comment sparked a reaction, and my stepmom replied saying I'm a hypocrite for claiming to have been wounded from the pain of a divorce, yet I was so eager and happy to start enjoying the benefits of the divorce barely a week after. Tension was brewing, and I was ready to match energy for energy when my father intervened. I left the house but promised to keep in touch with my father. Update number 2. Yeah guys, I know it's been a while. It's been 2 years since I left my father's house, and you would not believe what I'm about to tell you. Karma is real. My father recently called me and said Emily wanted to bring a man to the house who had indicated an interest in getting married to her. My father said that Emily and her mom had asked him to have me over on this day. This unfortunate man would be coming around to introduce himself, since I was a part of the family and all. So I called the man, whom I've never met, unfortunate, because that's the automatic fate of any man who would get married to somebody like Emily. What would she be doing in the house besides drinking, partying, and coitus? I told my father that I was not going to attend, and he pleaded with me to just show up for a peace sake, and after much pressuring, I decided to. I was at the house yesterday to meet Emily's lover, and it was a shocker for me, the way life always finds a way to reward everybody's actions. Everybody was seated in the parlor when I walked in. I had goose pimples pop up in my skin the moment I looked towards the face of the man who was seated beside Emily. It was Charles, the first man who swindled me and broke my heart. I didn't say anything because I could see the shock, and it was written all over Charles' face. Well, Emily introduced her fiancé to me and said, he's an entrepreneur. I was quiet as I watched Emily talk about how her fiancé was fascinated with her good business sense and had even proposed they started a business together. Charles was very queasy at this point. I guess he could smell the fear that I would blow his cover, but I was not willing to do that. I knew he only wanted to get married to Emily because of the money she had to her name, and not because he loved her. I found the whole scenario to be so pleasing, because Emily was about to make a terrible mistake, and I'm the last person on earth who would prevent her from it. I expected Emily and her mom to not let the event pass without throwing a jab at me. Emily went ahead to boast about how faithful and committed her man was to her. This was to remind me of my husband's unfaithfulness. I laughed on the inside because, you know what? I knew I was the one that was better off. She felt that she was fortunate to have a guy like Charles, but I knew it would only end up in tears very, very soon. Her engagement party would be coming up in a few days, and I'm brainstorming how I can utilize the situation to make it end in tears for her. Update number 3. Charles has been trying to reach out to me ever since he found out that he was going to be my in-law, but I did not give him the opportunity he sought. I did this to put him on the edge, because he would not know what to expect and obviously could not give Emily his best in that state. I, however, did speak with him when he threw Emily an engagement party, and I was passed an invite. I came to the party and my blood boiled because I saw with my own eyes that Emily had intentionally brought her friends to come and ruin my engagement party years ago. None of her friends who she had brought to my party years ago were present, and she did not permit the young and single people there to dress provocatively. This was how she was having her protectiveness over Charles. I walked up to Charles during the party and asked why he wanted to get married to my stepsister when he had broken up with me years ago and claimed that he had somebody else that he was trying to tie the knot with. Charles, at that moment, apologized for the whole thing, the way it ended between us, but noted that things did not equally work out with the other lady. He pleaded with me to not ruin his chance with Emily by revealing our history to everyone. So, I promised to keep my mouth shut if Charles refunded the money which I had given to him years ago when he claimed that we were both starting a joint business. Charles promised to pay me back after his marriage to Emily, and it was confirmation that he had some schemes plotting behind the scene. I was happy he didn't have Emily's best interest at heart, and I hope that doesn't make me a bad person. But I refused to wait till Charles noted he would give me half of the money before this week runs out. I could see Emily coming from behind me, and I put my hands right there on his shoulders, and I told him I would be expecting my money. Emily quickened her pace, and you could see the anger on her face. She immediately took my hands off the shoulder of her fiancé and flung them away. Charles said that nothing was going on, and I'd barely said a word when Emily started to create a scene by shouting at me for trying to seduce her man. I said I was just getting to know the guy who would marry my stepsister, but she claimed I was trying to take her man away from her because I simply could not get my own. Well, she immediately took her lover by the hand and they rejoined the party. I did not act like I was offended. I, however, planned to let the cat out of the bag once Charles gives me my portion of the money as promised. I'm sure that she would not be so willing to get married to the gold digger who had defrauded me and left me with a broken heart. Update number 4. I think this will be my last update, and it will be pretty brief. I did not take Charles's word for it about things not working out between him and the lady whom he jolted me for, so I hired somebody to look him up for me, and I learned he has 2 kids with a woman whom I suspect to be the one he left me for. So I go to visit this woman and her kids, and she told me how, well, they thought, though, that we were never married. They lived as a man and wife until recently when Charles had moved out of the house while telling her that he was going to raise some money to come and finally get married to her. I then just informed her that Charles was already engaged to someone and is going to be getting married very, very soon. The lady broke down in tears and was raging in anger. I consoled her and promised to allow her to get her revenge. Charles gave me part of the money as promised before their wedding day, but I gave it to another mother of his kids because I did not need it. The wedding day came and Emily looked her best for what she felt was going to be the best day of her life. Emily and Charles were at the altar when the priest asked if there was anybody present who had reasons why Charles and Emily should not be joined together in matrimony. The door suddenly flung wide open, with Charles's baby mama crying to the altar and both of her kids by her hip. Everybody just stared at the drama that had ensued. The lady gave Charles a dirty slap while the other 2 boys held onto his trousers while calling him daddy. Oh. Emily, who was pretty confused at this point, asked what the heck's going on. The lady acted as though there was nobody but her, Charles, and their children present, and she asked him if getting married to Emily was the work that he needed to do to raise money for their marriage. She noted that if not for me, who of course called this to his attention, she would have been hoping her man was working for their good, not knowing he was getting married to some other person. I then informed everyone present about our history and how Charles had some scheme concerning Emily behind the scenes. Emily cried as she heard the truth and learned that I was the one who had orchestrated the whole thing. Charles left the church in shame with his woman and their 2 kids trailing behind him, while my stepmom did her best to console Emily. They're both angry with me for what I did, but it doesn't make a difference, as they've never been happy with me anyways.
So the comment section was absolutely ruthless today. They were saying how the stepsister deserved every single form of karma or punishment that came upon her, and the icing on top of the cake was the wedding day. Well, it turned out to be an absolute nightmare for the stepsister because she found out the man who she thought was going to marry her turns out he already has a family, and now she was left in ruins. And just like I said, the comment section was having a field day with it. They were so excited. Let's talk about it in our comment section down below. What do you think of this peculiar situation OP found himself in? Here we go, guys. Let's discuss it. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every day, so if you do want to subscribe to the channel, consider hitting that button down below, and if you just can't get enough, make sure you check out my other 2 channels, Mr. Reddito's Stories and Mr. Reddito's Revenge. Alright guys, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, and of course remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.